Alrighty, welcome back. So next we're going to explore this part two piece of how culture and language shapes our lens. So what does that mean for us? As we sit with that truth, I am my language. It's important to remember that our language stories don't exist in isolation. They live inside systems, schools, policies, communities, families. For many of us, our language have been celebrated in some spaces and policed in others, sometimes even at the same time. To make sense of this, we turn to a few powerful frameworks that help us reflect on how culture, identity, and language shape our experiences in our teaching. So let's start with one key question. When has your language been policed or celebrated? Think about the moments in your life when your language or the way you spoke was policed. Maybe it was being told, speak English only, or being corrected for an accent, or feeling the pressure to sound a certain way, to be taken seriously. Now think about the opposite when your language was celebrated. Maybe it was hearing your home language proudly used by a teacher. Maybe it was translating for a loved one and realizing that bilingualism is a gift. Maybe it was simply feeling seen when a word, a phrase, or a story reflected your experience. These moments shape how we show up as educators. Because when we remember what it felt like to be silenced or to be affirmed, we begin to understand how deeply language affects belonging, identity, and power. This is one of the reasons why we have a dual language cohort this year at CityU. Take a moment to pause here and jot down one memory of each. You're going to jot this down in your journal. Jot down a time when your language was policed and a time when it was celebrated. We'll use these reflections as we move into our first framework, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause. Click on pause right now and write down one example of when your language was policed and one when it was celebrated. What did each experience teach you about power? Zaretta Hammond reminds us that culturally responsive teaching is not just about celebrating diversity, it's about building students' cognitive capacity by connecting new information to what they already know and who they are. This is a book that, as I told you last week, I invite you to purchase. If there's any book, it's going to be this one. We will dive into some of these chapters, and if you use this as part of your textbooks, you can highlight, refer to it in the future, and it'll be something that you won't regret buying, but you'll find useful, hopefully. So here, Zaretta Hammond, when she talks about mirrors and windows in her book, she's inviting us to ensure that every student can both see themselves reflected in what they learn, which is the mirror, and also see into others' experiences, which is the window. She says students need to see themselves mirrored in the curriculum. When students never see their identity, language, or community represented in the classroom, and whose knowledge counts. As bilingual educators, it's our job. It's our job to make sure that our curriculum and instruction are filled with both mirrors and windows. These mirrors and window spaces for affirmation and spaces for curiosity. Louise Moll, another researcher you can look for, he talks about the concepts of funds of knowledge. Funds of knowledge reminds us that every family holds a wealth of knowledge, practical, cultural, and relational. And that's something schools often overlook. These are the skills, values, and experiences passed through generations. How to build, how to care for others, how to navigate systems, how to adapt, how to thrive. When educators connect to students' funds of knowledge, we're saying your family and culture are not barriers to learning. They are the foundations of learning. In bilingual classrooms, this means designing instruction that honors home experiences and languages as central sources of expertise, not deficits. So, what funds of knowledge did your family teach you outside of school? How could you build lessons that honor those same kinds of knowledge in your students? So go ahead and reflect on that and go to discussion number 5 in our discussion post and go ahead and let us all know what funds of knowledge did your family teach you outside of school. And read your peers, your colleagues' responses and see if it resonates with you. See if you have any similarities. Respond to them. Respond to at least one person. And how could you build lessons that honor those same kinds of knowledge in your students? Go ahead and pause and go to discussion 5. So in dual language education, we operate from an additive model of bilingualism, meaning we aim to add languages, not replace them. A subtractive model assumes students must lose one language to gain another, often pushing English dominance at the expense of home language identity. Additive bilingualism that you see here with the arrow pointing up, this celebrates that linguistic growth in one language. It strengthens cognitive growth in the other. This is central to equity. This is central to equitable instruction because affirming a student's home language affirms their identity, their family, and their full humanity. So as you see here, our goal is not to replace languages, but to expand on them, to honor them, to utilize them as that core foundation for our students. So in a subtractive model, one language replaces another. Students are expected to assimilate, and language is lost. And when language is lost, culture is lost. In an additive model, both languages grow together. There's integration of both. There's a flow back and forth entre el uno y el otro. And there's language expansion, making them fully bilingual, fully bicultural, and fully biliterate. So in thinking about these two different models, think about how can I intentionally create additive language opportunities for my students where both their languages are visible, valued, and vital. Go ahead and write that in your journal and jot it down. And last, we get to integrate our frameworks, who we are becoming as educators. We've just explored 3 powerful frameworks: Zaretta Hammond's Mirrors and Windows, Louise Moll's Funds of Knowledge, and the concept of additive bilingualism. Together, they remind us that teaching is not neutral. It's deeply cultural, especially in a dual language classroom. Every decision we make in a classroom either sustains or suppresses a student's identity. As bilingual educators, our task is to create learning environments that reflect our students' brilliance, affirm their lived experiences, and expand their opportunities to thrive in both languages. I'm going to invite you to pause and reflect. Which of these frameworks most connects to your own bilingual story? How might you use these ideas to strengthen your classroom practice? I'm going to ask you to pause, go to our discussion boards, and let us know. So, reflection is only powerful when it moves into action. We're going to take these frameworks and apply them to real teaching practices, designing lessons that affirm students' identities, language, and cultural knowledge. As we move forward together, keep these three words in mind: reflect, connect, apply. They'll guide us through how to translate theory into the daily rhythms of a dual language classroom. Thank you for your thoughtful engagement today. I am looking forward to reading all of the discussions, all of your reflections, also your journal from Friday. Hope you took some time to fill that out and complete Journal 1. If you haven't done so already, respond to 2 peers in our discussion space by Sunday on the discussion of the week. Your voice adds to our collective understanding, and that's how we're going to truly build a reflective community. So I'll see you next week, where we move from reflection to practice. Con ganas as always.